Happy Wednesday, everybody. It's the Homestand Show. Albert Vartanian, my co-host James Sharman with me, and Kyle Dubas at it again. 6 new players since February 17th. They brought in a couple more, at least one more Stanley Cup champion in Luke Schenn. Rasmus Sandin, he moves to Washington for Erik Gustafsson in a first in 2023. Engvall, he goes to the Islanders for a third rounder in 24. Then they trade a third rounder to Vancouver, James, for Luke Schenn.
It's just one of those fun afternoons, wasn't it? And every time you looked at Twitter, like some new deal was coming down, not just the Leafs, but elsewhere as well. I mean, talk about being all in for Kyle Dubas. It's a contract year for him. Right? This is like a free agent hitting 100 points in his contract year, right? Because and trying to convince the brass, I'm worth the money for next year.
Yeah.
Bring me back. But unfortunately, of course, he's got the playoffs to worry about, which is completely out of his control. But at this point, I mean, okay, so the whole contract situation with Kyle Dubas is quite interesting. I don't think he could do much more than he's done already. He might do 1 or 2 more trades, but I think he's done a great job, right? He's improved that team. They keep mentioning the compete level. It's off the charts right now. They're giving really nothing up off their current roster apart from Pierre Engvall and Rasmus Sandin, who will probably be a 7th defenseman in the playoffs. I mean, I don't know what more he can do. I mean, if they fail in the playoffs this year, it's not on Kyle Dubas, I don't think.
All the pressure is now on the players. You know, Ryan O'Reilly came out today and he was pretty much saying, hey, we're all in. And so you could tell the players are hyped up about him. Dubas did everything that he possibly could do for this team. I mean, if somehow they get into the first round, which is very possible still, that they get bumped by Tampa Bay, it should be Tampa Bay, and he loses his job, he hasn't necessarily mortgaged the entire future.
No,
right?
No.
Who knows what's coming?
Not that many picks. I mean, there's still a first rounder.
Yeah,
but
he's got Matthew Nice. He hasn't given
up.
up, right? But I mean, Friday's the deadline, so there could be more moves coming.
But wouldn't you, if you're Shanahan, would you re-sign him now? I've seen enough. I really have to re-sign Kyle Dubas.
Right.
If he gets let go into the season, say they fell in the first round, he'll be snapped up like that.
Absolutely.
In a second. Now, I think he's learned on the job. Originally, it was all about small, fast, skilled players, right? And okay, kudos for trying that. It didn't work. He's realized that. And maybe he shouldn't have learned on the job. Maybe that was a mistake, right? But he's realized he's moved on from that now. You need a balance. I mean, I don't know why at this point you wouldn't re-sign him. I mean, I haven't heard one person out there criticize these moves.
No, it's hard to. I mean, the only thing that'll probably hang over his head is what Samsonov and Matt Murray do come in the playoffs.
That's a really good point.
That's probably the only thing, right? But other than that, he's done everything he's needed to do so far. I mean, what else do you want from a GM? People tend to forget, at least Leaf fans, that this team was tanking 8 years ago.
You remember it, right?
It wasn't that long ago.
It was awful.
And they were very lucky to get that pick to get Austin Matthews because this probably wouldn't be happening right
This team was renowned for not being bad enough to get the top pick every year, but not being good enough for the playoffs. It was like this purgatory they were stuck in. It was awful as a fan of the Leafs. And like I said, it's been, what, 6, 7 years now?
8 years.
8 years now of a really competitive team. And people still like to complain and whine about it. Like, do you remember how awful this was being a fan of this team?
But James, doesn't this feel different? I don't want to go all Leaf fan on you, but
go right ahead.
But this feels different. I mean, the buzzword that's being thrown around by Keefe, by players, by Kyle Dubas is character. And those are the types of players that they brought in. I was going through the roster, and I'm like, okay, Matt Murray's got a Stanley Cup. Luke Schenn's got a Stanley Cup. Ryan O'Reilly's got a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
I don't remember the last time, and maybe it was sooner than I thought, but they had 3 legitimate Stanley Cup champions on the team.
Probably Brian Leach.
I want to say maybe go back to like the Gary Roberts days, right?
Yeah. Probably, yeah.
But they haven't had that.
So it doesn't mean that Rasmus Sandin and Pierre Engvall didn't have any character?
No.
I'm sure they did.
Yeah, I'm sure they did.
They're great guys.
You know what? Engvall, I can't remember how many games. It's just under 20 playoff games, 0 goals.
He's won a Calder Cup.
Yes, he's won a Calder Cup. He's one of Dubas' guys. He tried to build him up, and he was too inconsistent.
Yeah, it wasn't even.
I mean, I don't want to throw around the word soft,
No,
but
he was soft. Let's not kid ourselves.
And they're bringing in guys who aren't.
Skate into a skirmish and then do a big button hook and skate away from it. It happened all the time, right?
Yeah.
And it's too bad because a big guy had a real good skill set, amazing skater, like 3 strides, he's down the ice, but just lacked that tenacity that clearly this team now realizes they need now. I mean, listen, Tampa's really tenacious. We know that. Boston, watch out, off the charts. But this team, I think, can at least compete on that level, which is so important.
With certain players like Sandin and Engvall, like sometimes the stats don't match up with the eye test.
No.
Sandin is very good, and I think he'll become a very good defenseman. Hopefully for the Leafs, he doesn't, really. But for him, hopefully he does.
Yeah,
I mean, he's a guy who can probably quarterback a power play, least a second power play unit.
Yeah.
What he'll become, we don't know.
Well, in Washington, I think they only have John Carlson under contract in the back end next year, so he'll get a lot of ice time.
Yeah. A lot of good moves by the Toronto Maple Leafs. Honestly, it just feels really different. I should probably touch on.
There was break our hearts again, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. There were some other moves that happened yesterday.
Here.
Patrick Kane officially signing with the New York Rangers. Mattias Ekholm went to the Edmonton Oilers. I'm sure there's more that's to come. Overnight, we saw Jonathan Quick leave the Los Angeles Kings. You know what's crazy to me about that? There's a chance he gets a statue, possibly. He won 2 cups for the Los Angeles Kings. 37 years old, had no trade clause.
Yeah, and the money was, what, 5.8?
Yeah, not much. And he's going to Columbus.
Yeah, well, listen.
Hey, Quick, thanks for the cups.
He was apparently not happy about moving there either. Really upset, but when you don't negotiate a no movement clause, then you can just look in the mirror, really.
Yeah.
Sad, though. I mean, what a great player he was for the Kings. He brought them 2 cups, like you mentioned there. Wonderful player, wonderful servant. And
I was trying to crunch the numbers with you. Can the Leafs get Quick if they make some moves happen, some salary retention?
I think Brandon Pridham can make anything happen.
Unbelievable.
Like, there's not a player that he couldn't figure it out somehow.
Yeah.
I mean, math is always my worst subject at school. I can't even understand any of this stuff, but he finds a way to fit these. Well, look at the Rangers even, same thing, right? Those capologists are just like these scientific freaks.
How bad would we be at that job? Oh my God.
I can't imagine anyone worse.
The fan base is going crazy. Actually. Oh, we're getting Patrick Kane, and the numbers just don't match up. Sorry, you can't play in the playoffs.
You're 46 million over the cap.
Albert doesn't know what to add. All right, coming up in the next block, we're going to talk to Noor about the Raptors, their big win last night.
Yeah, special, man. He made a couple plays not many guys in this league can make, the blocks to push the break, the and one. He was talking, he was keyed in, and that's a big boost. And especially a lineup out there without me and Pascal, for him to carry that in the fourth and get us some separation there that really won us the game ultimately was his defense and his playmaking and just putting pressure on the rim. So we need him to keep making those strides. We know how special of a player he can be, and he shows us that,
Yeah, Scotty Barnes is special. Welcome back into the Homestand Show. Joining us now, our NBA insider, expert, outsider, everything, Noor Zainab of Hoop Talks.
Debut appearance
on the Homestand Show.
Guys.
Welcome.
Thanks so much for having
that
me.
was Fred VanVleet talking about Scotty Barnes and the Raptors' big 104-98 win over the Bulls. My main takeaway here is his performance in the fourth quarter. 8 points, 3 for 4 from the field, 4 rebounds, 4 blocks. 4 blocks. That performance in the fourth quarter won them the game.
Absolutely. And the thing with Scotty Barnes, I think that we're having the discussion around right now is you're great at the fourth quarter. You're seeing how much he comes through. He's unafraid of the light. And you would usually with a young player, you expect them to be having big first 3 quarters because the lack of pressure isn't there as much. You can kind of screw around and have that be lost in the game because the main eyes are going to be there in the fourth quarter. So seeing a guy like that who's super young, coming off Rookie of the Year in his second year, not only be not afraid of the light, but not let his bad playmaking in the first 3 quarters bring him down. Be confident, want to go out there and be the better guy that he hasn't been the past 3 quarters. Right. I think is the main pull away here. It's not the fact that, he could have played better all game, but he's playing better when it counts, which is the fourth quarter. Those 4 blocks were key to the Raptors winning, and then that putback after OG missed the free throw. That was everything. That was everything.
That blocking Kobe White, that was incredible, right?
Fantastic.
It showed real guts, right? And he's tenacious. And for a team that grinds out wins, right? They won't blow away too many teams. Doesn't that bode somewhat well for the playoffs? Assuming, of course, they get into the play-in. Listen, this team might not go very far, but they won't get bullied by anyone, it seems.
I think that's the best part because if you know the Raptors have been struggling having a closer the past couple of years. After Kawhi, that was our main thing where you don't really have a guy that you can consistently rely on in the fourth quarter to get you those very needed buckets when the pressure is on, the eyes are on you, the defense where the other team is playmaking for your best players. So that's when someone has to come through. And that's Scotty's for us right now. And the fact that he's, again, second year, putting these numbers up, being the guy who's not afraid of the light, bodes well for the Raptors and their confidence, because we forget about confidence in a game like basketball and any sport, right? Like when you need someone to not just put up numbers, not just be an anchor on defense, but really not be afraid of the light. And if that's something that he can do well right now, imagine his future in the playoffs. So I think the Raptors really did well getting him over Suggs, unfortunately.
I mean, the scoring seems to be balanced right now throughout the lineup of the Toronto Raptors. And one important piece that played the other night against the Bulls was Fred VanVleet. He missed 3 games due to the birth of his 3rd child, and he had this to say about an interesting couple days off.
Oh, it felt great, man. I can't be too excited to be out of the house publicly, but yes, I'm good to be back at work, man. It's I had a hell of a break. You know what I mean? I had a hell of a break. I didn't get to obviously go on a trip or nothing, but I was home spending time with my family. Wifey was getting close, so we knew it could come at any time. It was a weird week, man. I had a death in the family. I had a birthday and the birth of my child all in the same couple days. So it was just one of those things, man. It just puts you back in place and gives you great perspective on life. And ultimately, I have an incredible life, and I'm extremely blessed. So. But yeah, I'm happy to.
A death in the family, a birthday, and the birth of another child. 9 assists, no turnovers. He was pretty good with the ball, just 3 points. But I think he can give Freddie a pass having this time off that he wasn't getting those buckets. But I mean, if you look at the human element, that's a lot to come off of, right? Your lack of sleep, you're mourning the loss of someone in your family. Okay, forget the whole birthday thing. I mean, it doesn't matter at a certain point, but that's a lot to take on heading into a game like this.
Absolutely. And that's where his leadership comes in, right? Like he hadn't have his first point story until the 3rd quarter.
Yeah.
And having, again, Fred VanVleet, his kids is a big story for Fred VanVleet. Whenever he comes back with a kid, is the whole new thing for the Raptors. So that's something to look out for. But I think in this way, it showed that he understood that his game wasn't going to be the best maybe in this one, because as you said, he's dealing with things off camera, off court. But he realized what he's going to be good at this game, and that's his assist making. He made sure that the balls were passing. He made sure that the offense was going. If he's not able to get the ball in, he made sure the pick and rolls were working. And this was a great game to have him run those pick and rolls, because Vucevic on the other side, not a great pick and roll defender. It's really easy to go around him. That's what the Raptors did too, with Fred VanVleet, with Scotty Barnes, Fred VanVleet with Pirtle, Fred VanVleet with even Siakam. Going around Vucevic was what got them the win. And had he maybe had a little bit of a better night, they might have maybe outscored the Raptors, the Bulls had, but the Raptors made sure that their defense on a guy like Zach LaVine, a guy like DeMar DeRozan was so potent that they had to rely on Vucevic to go out there and make them win the game, and he couldn't do that because, Fred VanVleet made sure that wasn't going to happen.
But do you think the Raptors should encourage Fred and his wife to have more kids, but to time it like just before the playoffs?
Yeah.
Like just before.
We've been begging.
Right?
I think fans send him over like date night passes and stuff right before the I was like, hey, check it out. Oh, you want
Freddie.
a hotel? A hotel soon? No problem. We'll take care of the kids tonight, Freddie.
You got
don't
that
worry
one
about it.
right after having a kid. You talked about what it's like.
Yeah, the opposite
having
to
a
me.
kid.
For me,
Right.
when I had my kid, I was a disaster. Have been for 12 years since, right? So it does change. But Freddie, obviously, something's working for him.
Yeah,
so good for him. I was listening to Toronto Sports Radio this morning for my sins. And one of the hosts, actually a guy I know, JD Bunker's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
JD loves to, kind of throw out some comments, to see what happens with the audience, right?
Because I'm Justin Pooney.
Yeah, he's basically Justin Pooney. Yeah, exactly. But he said that the Raptors are painfully mediocre. Painfully mediocre when it comes down to it.
Yeah.
Do you understand that? Is that a bit of a stretch or what?
See, I wouldn't say that they're mediocre. I think the Raptors are mediocre in terms of playoff terms. Like in a regular season, they're not a mediocre team. What they're putting out right now, their record doesn't reflect the team that they are, because they have really good individual pieces. It's a matter of how are these pieces being used. And we talked about the Raptors defense. This team is known for relying on their defensive values. That's been passed down from Masai, from Bobby, from Nick Nurse, who was a defensive-minded coach, to now the players. And they've been struggling defensively all year long too. Not sure why. I don't know what's happening there, because you have one of the best defending players on the team, alone as well. But in terms of offense, I think what they're really lacking, because they have a lot of players on the team that should be able to get the ball, maybe not be consistent, but they should be able to still make those shots. But what's not working out for them right now is they don't have a shot creator. They don't have a guy who playmakes for them. So if you have guys out there who are going to be relying entirely on isolation plays, on one-on-ones, on transition buckets, because you get that after defending someone, taking the ball back, you can't really win a lot of games that way, because you have to have half-court offense, and we don't have that whatsoever. So, and if you're looking at our coaching staff right now too, I think this part is actually really undermarked when it comes to assessing the Raptors, and it's who do you have coaching that does offense through coaching. We don't have many guys anymore. You used to have Chris Finch, you used to have Sergio Scalero, who was a very offensive-minded coach. They were both offense leading coaches, and it helped out with the pairing of Nick Nurse, because Nick Nurse is a defensive-minded coach. So you had defense there and you had offense. Now all you're seeing is you should have defense, because Nick Nurse is there for defense. lacking there, and there's barely any offense happening at all. And I think that comes down to the shot creation. If you can get someone who can get these guys open when everything's at dull, then I think they give themselves a shot, because you have good players on the squad that can go off any night, and the East is wide open, unless from, Bucks and Celtics.
I mean, getting buckets isn't for a lack of trying. They had 23 more shots than the Bulls last night, but they only shot 40% from the field. It's a problem. Back on their defense, I mean, at times they're missing OG, at times they're missing Fred. They didn't have a big like they do now in Jakob Poeltl, so I think there's going to be a bit of a transition with the defense. I think that's where Nick Nurse wants to build his team around, turn defense into offense. But he actually touched on this current semi-winning streak. They won 8 their last 10 games. Yeah. Not bad for a painfully mediocre team. Right? He had this to say about his team's performance.
I think that over the month, and even maybe creeping back a couple weeks into January, I've been much more satisfied with the defensive effort. And again, I think that's what we knew we were going to be built on all season, and we're getting there. And it's been that's going to give us a chance every night. I mean, what did we shoot 40% tonight and still win? That's not great shooting percentage. I think the offense will come here shortly. I mean, we know we're running out of time, but I think the motions and the moves and the things we're doing and the spacing and the relocating, all that stuff is at a pretty high level. The cutting's getting better, passing's getting better. Now we just got to do the most important part, put it in the hole.
Put the ball in the hole. At least Nick Nurse, he knows it. He understands what his team needs. But I think one good thing coming out of bringing in Poeltl and now Will Barton, he no longer has to run his players into the ground. He has a rotation. What does Will Barton bring to this team?
Honestly, if you ask people out there, it might not be the sexiest signing, might not be the hottest signing out there, but this is what the Raptors needed. And they actually outbid the Celtics to get him. They won in that regard, which is that, last year they tried to get Malcolm Brogdon over from the Celtics. He chose the Celtics, not the Raptors. But having a guy like Will Barton choose the Raptors over the contenders, Boston Celtics, for me, I think that's a pretty good big giveaway to what he expected the team to do. But I think for Will Barton, he's going to come in and have a role. He's not going to be a guy that will be told, well, you're going to try this out, see what happens. He's going to have one strict role off the bench. That's going to be to shoot. That's it. He's not good at defense. We know that about him. He's a really good three-point shooter. I think 38% on the season. Actually dropped down last night because he missed a three-pointer, so it's like 37.7 right now. But he's going to get up there, no problem. But the best part about him, in my opinion, is his clutch shot making. The league right now is, I believe, 46% on clutch shot making. He's 54%. So if you have a guy like that coming off the bench, you can give your bench some spark. As you said, it also saves you time with your starters. Last night, for the first time ever, they played less than 45 minutes. I haven't seen this in the season at all before. And then have him pair up with guys like Boucher, guys like Precious, guys like Gary Trent, who are younger guys compared to him, because he also has veteran presence being on the Nuggets team, and the Nuggets really needed him when he was averaging 11.1 points in the playoffs that year. So I think having his shooting there, his leadership, and just a guy that understands his role, have a specific role, would be really good for the Raptors.
Yeah, Will Barton, he averaged over double digits over his 8 years in Denver. The Raptors back in action on Thursday night. All right, welcome back to the Homestand Show. Albert Vartanian, James Sharman, and we're now joined by Avry Lewis-McDougall of the Hockey News. Avry, we were just talking about everything that went down yesterday in the NHL in terms of trades, and finally somebody in the Western Conference wakes up and makes a big move, and this time it's the Oilers getting Mattias Ekholm, a really good defenseman. And Avry, I think this is a piece that Edmonton really needed. I mean, if there's a team that needs to go all in with the best player in the world, it's Edmonton, right?
Oh, absolutely. You have Connor McDavid on pace for 150 points, Draisaitl on pace for 100 points himself, Zach Hyman nearly on pace for a 30-goal campaign, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins on pace for 94 points. If not now, when? So Edmonton goes out, they get an Ekholm, who's a great two-way D-man, a big piece out in Nashville, bring him to Edmonton. It's what they needed. And Ken Holland, for a long time here, people have been asking, hey, Ken, make a move. Do something to show to these young guys like McDavid and Draisaitl, you want to win right now and not in 3 or 4 years. And this is a move that shows to his club, hey, the time to win a cup in Edmonton is now, fellas.
Now, Ekholm, like you mentioned there, he's a two-way player. We know that, but a real shutdown presence. That being said, the Oilers trade Tyson Barrie as part of the package to get him. Are there more moves coming here? Because that power play is so good with Tyson Barrie. What's the next move?
Right now, I don't think it's wait and see right now with the Oilers. I could see them trying to possibly get a guy like Erik Gustafsson for the right D side. Erik Gustafsson is a strong D man, a tough guy to Florida. But I can also see as well too a name like Nick Bjugstad coming in as well as a forward. Nick Bjugstad in Arizona is a great penalty kill man, great face-off man. I could see him coming in as a depth forward. So I will not be shocked if we see Nick Bjugstad or Erik Gustafsson coming in now as additional ads before a trade deadline on March 3rd.
Avery, what's the feeling like right now in Edmonton after this deal?
Oh, you go on Oilers Twitter, hockey Twitter, you ask your neighbor, fans down the street, you ask your grandparents, everybody's happy. Everybody is overjoyed. And this is a deal that Edmonton needed. Edmonton needed a guy like Ekholm, shutdown guy, two-way guy, and they didn't spend, yes, they traded away Barry, they traded away first-round picks and prospects, but you ask a lot of fans, many fans in the city said, finally, we don't need to care about prospects in 5, 6, 7 years. Do what it takes to get a big D-man, a top guy in this city, because time's ticking with McDavid and Draisaitl. You're in year 9 of Draisaitl and year 8 of McDavid. You got to make a move to win now. You can't wait until year 10, 11, 12, like Ovechkin in Washington. It took him 13 years to win a cup with the Capitals. So a lot of fans are overjoyed, and they see it now as, finally, management is showing us we want to get back to Western Conference Finals again this year and go further to get to their first cup since 2006.
And of course, you have the best player in the world, which will obviously help you get there. It was only a year ago that you could have a debate. Who was the best? Was it McKinnon? Was it McDavid? Was it Matthews? There's no doubt now who the best player in the world is. He's taken it to a brand new level this season, it seems. But are there more levels to come, do you think, from Connor McDavid?
James, I don't know. It's scary because he's not even 30. He's nowhere near 30. He's 24, 25 years old, and he's on pace of 150 points in what is considered the toughest era of the NHL. It's a scary thing. And even funnier, if you ask McDavid himself, he'll tell you, I'm not a goal scorer. That's terrifying. A guy who's saying that and he's on pace for a 66-goal campaign, he might have another level to get to when he hits age 26, age 27. What that could be, I don't know. But I know if you're an opposing defenseman, an opposing goalie, an opposing fan, you're going to be up at night having some nightmares about him going 1 through 5 once again.
Yeah, and speaking of the opposite of nightmares, dreams, I think, for most Oilers fans and Leafs fans, but to see both of those teams in a Stanley Cup final. They meet tonight in Edmonton. Obviously, I'm sure the Toronto Maple Leafs making tons of deals to bolster their team and get ready for a long playoff push. What are your thoughts on what Dubas did?
I like it a lot. And it tells me, again, Kyle Dubas knows he cannot have another year where this team fails to get past the first round. He knows it. Everybody in Leafs management knows that you can't have another year not getting past the first round. I like what he did originally to bring in Ryan O'Reilly. He's someone who we've known has had playoff success beforehand. With St. Louis before, and then you go and you bring in Jake McCabe and Sam Lafferty, and I like the fact that Kyle Dubas is getting very aggressive right now because this is a dang good Leafs team right now. You're getting a lot of production from, again, the Mariners, Matthews, Nylander. This is a time right now. You can't, much like Edmonton, you can't squander the young talent you have right now, putting up numbers for you and doing all they can to bring success back to a strong hockey market. So Kyle Dubas knows the time right now to succeed is right now in Toronto.
Yeah, time right now for the Leafs, time right now for the Oilers, and it should be a fantastic game tonight in Edmonton with all that attack going to be on display. Avery, thanks so much for doing this, guys. Make sure you follow Avery on Twitter at Avery, a great follow for everything hockey and Edmonton and Everton, as the case may be.
Awesome. Thanks, fellas.
Thank you, Avery. All right, well, Leafs taking on Edmonton. We just talked about it tons. Talk about an exciting matchup with two of the best offenses in the league.
Yeah.
I mean, the dream would be to see them in a Stanley Cup final, but I just feel like it's a little unlikely.
Well, there's a lot of hockey between now and then, right?
Yeah.
Especially the way the East is shaping up at the moment. It's crazy. And even the West, Colorado isn't getting any worse, are they?
No.
It's going to be a great playoff series, throughout the spring for sure. But, this game is exciting, right? But for me, I'm more concerned about the Leafs on the other side of the puck, right, against this kind of team. We know they can score goals, right?
Yeah.
We know how great they are. They've addressed the grit, the bottom six. They've now addressed potential defensive holes, how can they face up against one of the best offense in the NHL? I'm really curious because when they meet Boston and meet a Tampa in the first round, well, assuming they meet Boston, I'm not getting too ahead of myself here.
You are though.
But
I mean,
they're great offenses, right? And none quite as good as Edmonton. So I think that battle tonight for me will be most interesting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Sheldon Keefe does with the D-men. Now you got a couple more that came in.
Yeah.
Who's going to play where? Who's going to fit in where? Keefe actually came out and talked about Jake McCabe and where he might fit in. And he had this to say.
Makes it easier knowing that you've got guys that are going to come in. I mean, O'Reilly coming in and Shari, like it's been so seamless. And in fact, I think they've really improved our environment just with their personalities and experience and confidence that they have. And then the on-ice part of it, I think we've just, Kyle's looked at our team and has been really honest about it and trying to figure out ways that we can get better, and he's been aggressive with it. So I don't think there's any doubt that we've improved in our depth and our competitiveness, at both forward and defense.
I'm sure there's going to be a lot of tinkering along the way, as you mentioned, but McCabe and Brody's becoming that guy where you put him with anybody to get that guy going.
Yeah, he's my favorite defenseman, at least, because he just calms everyone down, right?
Yeah.
And whoever he's playing with tends to play quite well, which is why I like him with Riley, long term. And I think you're going to see that long term. Hull's been playing there recently, hasn't really been a great pairing thus far. But I mean, there's so many options here, right? Where's Mark Giordano fit in at 38, 39 years of age? Can he play a regular big minutes in the playoffs? He says he can, and there's no reason to think that he can't, other than the fact that he's old, right? But there's no evidence that he's slowing down.
No, not at all.
Where does Luke Schenn fit in?
Right,
a right side defenseman. Gustafsson's got 38 points in Nashville so far. There's options here for Sheldon Keefe, and it's going to be interesting. From now to the end of the season, it's going to be about experimentation for this Leafs team. So much for these games meaning nothing. They mean everything, right?
They mean
it's
everything
about finding
now.
out who's playing with whom.
Yeah, and home ice is still up for grabs as well against Tampa Bay. Speaking of defensive pairings, we asked producer Stevie Z to put together a board of his projected Toronto Maple Leaf pairings, and this is what he has here. He has Riley with Jake McCabe, Brody, Liljegren, and George Giordano with Luke Schenn. Quite the shutdown pair at the back end.
And with respect to Luke Schenn and Giordano, not the most fleet of foot, right? Now they're smart players. They've been through it. They can position themselves really well. But from lack of speed back there, I'd be concerned about that. But that'd be some great grit. I'd like to see it in some matchups. But I mean, listen, Schenn he brings certain things to the table, but he's not exactly Paul Coffey, is he?
No, I think the four consistents in that six is Riley, McCabe, Brody, and Giordano, and then chop and change the rest.
Late in the games for sure. If it's a close game, you don't want to see anyone else out there but those four.
All right, coming up, we're going to Raptors with Noor Zainab. All right, welcome back to the Homestand Show. James Sharman and Albert Vartanian with you. And now it's time to talk some baseball. And joining us now is Andrew Zuber, the host of Less Than Jay's podcast and the Wrestling Brain. Zubes, we cannot forget that. I want you to fill in the blank here. Ready? The MLB pitch clock is blank.
Awesome. It's awesome. It's
really?
Awesome. Absolutely.
Okay.
I would love to be on here and be an old crank and be like, they're ruining the game, but the game is just too damn long a lot of the times. And let's speed it up. I'm a proponent. I'm a progressive. We'll call it. I'm into it. I think we don't need the guys walking out and walking in and diddling around. Let's get down to action. So far in spring, I really enjoyed it, and I think you're gonna not notice it pretty quickly. So I'm in favor of this sort of change. I think it's long overdue.
Just the 3 hours now for a baseball game, mate. So it's taking some steps in the right direction, Zubes. Now I'm hearing though that the broadcasts won't actually have the clock visible to the viewer, which I think I quite like actually. Are you a fan of that, or do you want to see this?
I think it's a good idea. I sort of think of it akin to the play clock in the NFL, that you should really only see it if we're seconds away from it being a problem, right? Maybe if we get to below 5, you can bring it up on the broadcast. But for the most part, I think like a good defenseman, you should not notice it unless it's a problem. Sort of conversation piece. That's sort of the way that I view it. You don't want to be counting down from 15 over and over again in your head. You'll get the idea if it's been too long, too short. There was a great Twitter clip that went around the other day that was like, it was a guy throwing a complete inning this year versus a guy throwing one pitch. I think with Pedro Baez throwing one pitch in the same amount of time last year in the playoffs. So
that's crazy.
That's the change that had to come. So I'm excited about that.
What I don't like is the pitch clock behind the catcher that you can see that everyone in the stadium would see, right? I felt myself just looking at it while watching the game, and it threw me off a little bit. So I do like that maybe just popping up in the last 10 seconds or whatever the case may be. But how does this, from an inside baseball point of view, how does this change the game in terms of how pitchers manage themselves?
It's an interesting question, because I think, baseball sort of had an identity crisis the last little bit. Is like, are the games exciting enough? Is there enough action? The ball in play is what you're looking for, and sort of the analytical revolution has led us down a path here 20 some years in that, a thing you can control and a thing you can predict is strikeouts and velocity and movement go hand in hand. And, the idea is, well, pitchers maybe not be throwing 110% every single time when they don't have as much time to hold back and take their breath and rear back. And maybe you get, more, for lack of a better word, mistakes. You get more pitches that can be hit. And I think you combine that with the shifting, where a lefty can pull a ball into right field and it goes back to being a hit like it was for 110 years. We're back in the good thing. I know there is some hand wringing about pitcher injuries. To that, I would counter, as we had pitcher injuries without the clock. I don't know that you're rushing them that much. And if you're feeling rushed, don't pitch so hard. If you don't like it, pitch better is the classic David Price line. But I think it'll be an adjustment. I think the way you're going to see it called right now and the way you're going to see it similar to in any other sport where they are having an officiating change, where they're calling fouls more, they're calling hooking more. They'll do it a ton in the preseason. They'll do it a ton in the first month. And by the middle of the season, you won't even remember there was been a change. So I think maybe you'll see some guys work a little bit faster. For those guys, the Roy Halladay types, the Mark Burley types from back in the day that worked fast anyway, they're going to be right at home.
Yeah, Mark Burley was so quick, wasn't he? I forgot about that.
Scherzer too.
Yeah,
loves this thing.
Now, hey, listen, it's going to change even more, though, right? Next year, they're going to have these virtual strike zones, reportedly. I think they're trying them this year in half the minor league ballparks. So no more umpires, actually, in their subjectivity with strike zones. It'll come from the top, from Skynet or whoever it is. Are you a fan of that? I mean, listen, people are so hard on umpires in baseball in particular in the strike zone. I suppose it makes sense.
This is going to blow your minds, because I'm so pro the rule changes. I'm so anti-robot umpires. I think it reminds me of, we clamored, and you guys know this as big footy guys, you clamor and you clamor and you clamor for a replay system, and you get it, and you're like, oh, this sucks a lot, actually. I just think it sort of boils down to this idea that these things are supposed to be perfect, and it's supposed to be just not reality. I think a similar thing when we talk about, people will get really up in arms over late injury scratches and subterfuge in the injury reports. It's like, where would you get the impression that this is supposed to be fair, that this is supposed to be even? That's not the reality. That's not how this stuff was built. It's supposed to be competitive. It's not supposed to be perfect. And the closer we get to striving towards perfection, the more we sort of suck the soul out of these sort of things. So also, who are you going to get mad at? You rung up looking on strike 3 in a big spot. Who are you going to yell at? You can't just yell into the sky. It's no fun. The blame is totally on you. And I'm also somebody, I like the unmeasurables, the unquantifiables, catcher framing, the ability to steal strikes at the edges of the strike zone or lack thereof, that advantage or disadvantage, I think is a really big part of the toolbox of the catcher, which is a really unique position that doesn't exist anywhere else in any other sport. And I think losing that, you're losing a type of player that is important, that has a lot of value. If guys are going back there and all they have to do is throw and hit, maybe we see a different version of that position going forward. So cautious. And I'm also cautious on going halfway on it, of doing challenges, or it only beeps when you need a human back there you can yell at. The whole point of the job is to have a guy that can be the blame. So I'm cautious on that one. Anything that touts itself to be perfect is sort of makes me wary.
Yeah, and it's never perfect. You brought up a good example of VAR in soccer, right? I mean, it takes so much away from the game now.
Dreadful.
When you watch soccer and a goal goes in, you don't even really celebrate right away if it's your team playing, because that there's a chance there might be a toenail that's offside.
It's killed theater.
Yes.
It's killed the theater.
And celebrating
It really
a second time is not the same. You got to keep the human error, the human element in there. I'm a big proponent of that. Let's talk about the Blue Jays. They made a big hire and bring in Jimmy Click, VP of Baseball Strategy. He's going to work closely with Ross Atkins. 3 seasons with the Astros. He won a World Series. 15 years with the Tampa Bay Rays. What role is he going to play here for the Toronto Blue Jays?
First and foremost, important to have a bald guy in the front office. I think that's big. You get a bald guy with a beard, he is fearless. That's major for me. But you're talking about 2 teams that provide 2 different examples of ways to win. That the Jays are sort of playing in both things. The Houston Astros core that we saw, they had young Springer, they had young Bregman, then they went out and they got Garrett Cole, they went out and they got Zach Greinke, they went out and they got Justin Verlander. They are sort of the model for how the 2010s championship team was built. And you see the Blue Jays following that same path, where you have Vlad and Bo and some of the other young guys, Manoah, on these rookie contracts, on these renewable contracts, making absolute percentages of what they should be making on the open market. And those opportunities, that 5-6 year window, gives you the chance to overpay a little bit for the pieces you can't just develop, which is top of the end pitching, which is bullpen help, which is adding George Springer, which is adding Hyunjin Ryu. So what I think is really interesting is the Blue Jays are entering the hard part. They sort of got the first part. They did it quickly, and then did it. It's sort of easy to go into the offseason and be like, we should sign the best center fielder. We should sign the best pitcher. We should sign whatever we have a hole, we should just go sign the best guy. Now you're at a point where you're 2 or 3 years away from Vladdy and Bo having to decide with that. You can't just keep shopping at the top of the market over and over again. You're going to have to figure out, what can we develop? What can we trade for? Who can we replace? How can we get 90% of this for 10% of the price? This is the challenge. And that's where Ray's experience comes in. And that's where also that Houston experience comes in, because they were able to make some tough decisions, like, say, Garrett Cole can walk away and we can fill that hole. Carlos Correa can walk away and we can fill that hole. George Springer can walk away and we can fill that hole, and they can win the World Series last year. That sort of is the step the Jays are going to have to go towards here, and say, we have a lot of elite talent. What really is and isn't replaceable? And we see the first steps of that this offseason. Obviously, it wasn't James Click involved, but letting Teoscar Hernandez go is like a move that fits in this era, where, like, he is a very good player. He is an all-star. Would you rather have Teoscar Hernandez than Erik Swanson? Almost certainly. But does that flexibility allow you to sign Bassett and allow you to get Swanson and allow you to pay for somebody else in the future? This is where they're going to have to really be cautious and careful. I hate to use the word contention window, but this is about maximizing the timeline that you have right now, because, if something goes wrong this year and now you're in trouble, then you're down to 1 or 2 years with the discount deals for Vladdy and Bo. So it's a really important, exciting time, but it's one where, it's more important than ever to make the right decisions. And you said the resume. I mean, you talk about the last 10, 15 years, there's no 2 teams that provide a better example as to how to thread that needle than Houston and Tampa. You could say maybe LA, but that series just like keep throwing money at it. So I'm excited. It's an interesting one. Obviously, there is a bit of vagary around what you get from any sort of front office guy, but resume-wise, hard to top.
So you get Click in the front office, and then as a coach, you get Don Mattingly in there as well. Who should be more nervous, Ross Atkins or John Schneider?
That's a great question. Because you could, oh boy, maybe John Schneider, only because the resume and the comfort and the familiarity with the organization at large is a little bit smaller. He's not a guy that has a major league resume to speak of. He's obviously somebody that has a ton of organizational value and has been a part of the Blue Jays org, bottom to top now for basically his entire managerial career. But Ross is connected to Mark, and he is connected to the ownership and going all the way to the top. That one levels all the way up. And you sort of, as many different people may have small quibbles, you sort of have to be pretty happy with the way that they've gone about assembling this team. They identified their guys in the draft and in international free agency and did it. And then they sort of graduated the wave of players that they came in with in the prospects and bringing up. And now they have their own guys in Manoah and now Tiedemann. Maybe they're sort of like, their class is now what we're seeing, and it has been pretty successful. The playoff disappointments notwithstanding, talking about a team that's had consecutive 90-win games, that is going to have an opportunity this year as well to be a contender, that probably going to be a sexy sleeper pick to be a World Series winner as they were last year, have, you know, identified some weaknesses and made some bold moves. So if it all collapses, you could see Ross being a little bit more hot seat. But if things are not going as smoothly with the talent they've assembled, I guess you could say John. That is a tough one. You want to say neither, but maybe John by a hair.
Quickly, Zubes. I mean, I'm going to assume that most casual Blue Jay fans won't be tuning into every single spring training game, maybe no spring training games.
They're lost.
But if they do, what's one thing they should be watching for?
Yeah, a great question. I think the thing you're watching for right now is you want to call it the Manoah timeline. Who's on that Alek Manoah timeline? Because a lot of the high end, a lot of the exciting roles are spoken for. You know basically who's going to be playing every position in the infield. Vlad is at first, Chapman is at third, Bo is at short. The second baseman rotation is set. You know who's behind the plate in Kirk and Jansen. You know who's in the outfield. You know all three of those guys. The question is, you know, you see this all the time in baseball, is you have a team that's already playing well, and then in July they call up a guy that wasn't on the roster, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, where did they find this dude? And that could be Ricky Tiedemann, that could be Josver Zulueta, that could be Addison Barger. They could call up they have a third base prospect that is suddenly gone from sort of an afterthought in the system to a top 30 prospect in baseball. That's sort of not expected and is on the 40-man, could be called up at any time. I think what you're looking for in spring, especially because there aren't a lot of high-end, high-profile jobs to be done, is who is showing you enough right now that with 2-3 months in AAA could suddenly show up in the middle of the summer and give this team that kick in the back half. It's always part of what makes spring so exciting.
A lot to look forward to. Thank you so much, Andrew Zuber, the Zubes, for joining us here on the Homestand Show.
Thank you, fellas. Have a great day.
Welcome back to the Homestand Show, and we've reached the end of the show, James Sharman. We have to thank everybody who's on here today. We had Andrew Zuber talking baseball. We had Avry talking Oilers and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Noor was on talking basketball and the Raptors. You got a great question during our MLB
Yeah, my
chat.
first great question of the week as Homestand comes to the viewers' sets.
Yes.
It's great. It's exciting times.
We got some soccer talk in there. Just a little bit.
Yeah, a couple of times. Yeah, we need more of that, though. We need to get a name for this last segment, by the way. 3 minutes, end of the match game.
I've been workshopping names. I was thinking Banter Zone.
Yeah, I know you love that, don't you? You're a big fan of it.
I'm stealing that from old Fox Soccer.
Yeah,
stuff.
it takes me back to a certain place in my life where...
You had a great time during that.
It was good times, yeah.
Did you enjoy doing soccer highlights?
I love doing soccer highlights.
Really?
Oh, it's so much fun. I mean, come on. You have some personality, you throw it in there.
Yeah.
You know, it's the North American way of doing soccer, whereas overseas, you watching these soccer highlights, it's very monotone, very gentle, as opposed
and longer
to
highlights, more analysis, and here it's kind of just go,
Yeah,
right?
but it's fun. It's so much fun. Yeah.
Have you ever done like hockey highlights, basketball highlights?
I not on TV. I haven't. No, I have done them before.
Cool, on your couch?
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much. Yeah, I have no life. I'm trying to be Tim McAuliffe.
Yeah.
You know, by myself.
Yeah, why not? Charms and friends. I'm
Yeah,
all in.
there you go. I like it.
So much to look forward to, man, coming up, especially in Toronto. You got the Blue Jays in spring training, the Leafs, Oilers, TFC.
It's a good time of the year right now, isn't it?
Yes, John.
It's a great time of the year right now.
It is a great time of the year.
For Toronto sports fans, for sure.
Probably the Leafs, though, maybe at the top of the list in terms of excitement.
Well,
moment?
yeah. I mean, listen, the NBA trade deadline was great, right? So much happened. The Raptors didn't do too much in the end, but this has been an insane couple of weeks for the
And it's
Leaf
not done
fans.
yet. Friday we have the deadline, so.
So who are they going for? Are they going for a goaltender, do you think?
I'm in the mind that there's got to be at least a look at some goalie. I'm not sure who. I thought Korpisalo would be an interesting one. I don't know how they would make that work with the cap, but now he's gone to Los Angeles, Johnny Quick to Columbus.
But do you move Matt Murray out to accommodate the new goaltender? And who's taking that contract?
I think they're going to give him a shot. I think credit to the Leafs organization for being able to do whatever they had to do with this cap to get these players in. Once Murray comes back off of the LTIR, they have about $700,000 left
to play with, which is incredible.
Yeah.
Right, what they've done. And they've got better.
Would you throw a pick in there? Maybe you trade like a Kerfoot? Who knows what you can get, right?
Yeah, well, Kerfoot's on, 3.5, I think, isn't he?
I believe so, yeah.
Around there. They dumped Engvall already in his $2 million salary. So there's lots that can be done. And listen, they're obviously all in. So why not, Kyle?
Yeah.
Spend some more capital.
And the Leafs got the Oilers tonight.